Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 278 of Album of the Day, in which for today's album review I'm going to be talking about the new album from the musical project of a singer-songwriter, formerly from Alabama, I believe, that for most of her career has been based out of Philly, and her music definitely has been a pretty big part of the current indie scene. As she's been lauded for her voice as well as her songwriting capabilities. I am of course talking about the project of singer-songwriter Katie Crutchfield, known as Waxahatchee. She's put out over 5 studio albums, including the one I'm going to review today, her latest one, which came out on March 27th, 2020, and the album is called St. Cloud, and I got this on vinyl at the store that I'm wearing a shirt for currently, and that's the Soundgarden in Baltimore. Certainly one of my favorite albums of the year. If you remember in my best albums of the year so far video, I did mention this album, so that shows you how much I really like it. Here's the front cover, which is kind of simple image, but it may be one of my favorite album covers of the year because it very much showcases the tone of the album very well. And then there's the back. There's 11 tracks on the record, and I believe it's over 40 minutes, something like that. Released on Merge Records. This is her 3rd album to be released on Merge. Here's, this appears to be a poster. And here's the vinyl sleeve. It's got the lyrics on there, and then there's a photo of Katie Crutchfield. Side A, and then there's side B. No real bells and whistles happening here. And there's also a download card in there, which I don't really use download cards anymore because, I don't really use iTunes anymore. But I do have this on my Spotify Premium. And that's the vinyl packaging for St. Cloud, the new album from Waxahatchee. So this is the first time I've actually covered Waxahatchee on this channel, like doing an in-depth review of one of her albums. And there's a pretty good reason for that. I mean, even though I've only heard the only other full album of hers I've listened to is 2017's Out in the Storm, and I had heard maybe a few other songs from other projects of hers. I've never been the biggest Waxahatchee fan. I mean, though I definitely knew Katie was talented as a singer at least, and she did occasionally come through with some really solid lyrics. That I kind of found the sound on a lot of her records to be kind of plain and sort of, run-of-the-mill. I mean, it may be kind of crazy. I consider Out in the Storm to be kind of that way, considering it is easily her heaviest album yet, but still the kind of noisy sound of that record, was kind of, it was very sort of basic in terms of an indie rock and grunge record, in my opinion. However, hearing some of the teaser tracks for this new record and hearing the new direction she was going in, I actually kind of liked what I heard, and I thought, maybe this time around, Katie Crutchfield could actually floor me with one of her projects. I mean, the song Fire, which teased for this record, was one of the ones I definitely very much loved right out of the gate. The other few teaser tracks took their time to grow on me, they especially grew on me on the context of this record. Uh, record, and record. I was just, I was oddly very hopeful that maybe this could be her magnum opus, and sure enough, St. Cloud is, dare I say it, Waxahatchee's best album. Like, it's definitely a departure from her indie rock sound, definitely embracing more of a rootsy, Americana, and alternative country kind of sound. This is definitely tapping into sort of her southern Alabama roots for sure, and roots for sure. This definitely is a very lived-in kind of project, and it's definitely a less heavy and more kind of very beautiful and very lived-in and very resilient kind of record. And that kind of has something to do with her actually recovering from addiction and getting sober. And I think that ultimately kind of results in her improving as a songwriter and a singer. The album kicks things off with the song Oxbow, which is this gorgeous little keyboard-drenched ballad. And what really makes the song so interesting, in my opinion, is how she definitely sings in a way that makes the lyrics seem not really there, and I didn't quite understand what she was saying until I got the vinyl and had a lyric sheet that I could read. That there certainly are some lyrics that see her kind of talking about where she was, how she was in a kind of downstate, and how she just wanted to kind of redeem herself and sort of come back better than ever. Definitely a great way to open the record. Very lovely. The next track, Can't Do Much, is definitely a much more accessible track in terms of the melodies. Definitely some very lovely sounds on here. The twangy guitars, the sweet kisses of mandolin on there, as well as Katie's singing on the track is fantastic. Even though this isn't one of my favorite tracks on here, I mean, even though there's definitely some songwriting ideas on there that I really like, after a while, the sort of the melody of this track and the instrumentation does get a little bit stale. Thus it's definitely not really one of the best tracks in here. However, it's followed by easily one of the best songs of Waxahatchee's career with Fire. I mean, just the vocal on here is like out of this world. It she does something very sophisticated with her voice on the track, and really making the lyrics sound that much more engaging that way. And it's definitely very beautifully produced. Love the electric piano, the kind of crackly guitars, the layers of intricate percussion are very nice near the end. Also, what sounds maybe like a Mellotron keyboard or something like that. It's a very simple, but yet very lovely kind of ballad about forgiving yourself and kind of learning how you could do better and stuff like that. Definitely a song I can very much connect with. The song Lilacs, I think, also is very beautiful. It's beautiful, and this is the one track where the more accessible sound actually is a little more memorable. It's got one of my favorite choruses on the record, mostly because that poetry is so good. Like, let me just read some of it for you. So, if I'm a broken record, write it in the dust, babe. I'll fill myself back up like I used to do. And if my bones are made of delicate sugar, I won't end up anywhere good without you. It's like, it hits me right here. Also, I think the guitars are very nice. The guitars are very nice, and also I really like how the in the chorus she kind of sings her own background vocal, and it sounds very passionate with the way they just her lead vocal and her background vocal just sort of meld into one another. Uh, then after that is the song that's kind of, as of right now, my favorite track on the record, and that would be the I. I mean, sorry, Anthony Fantano, this is the best song on the album in my opinion. This is the one song that I feel like I connect with the most out of any track on here. Musically, it definitely is beautiful. It is definitely one of the more skeletal tracks on the record, but definitely very nice. The acoustic guitars, I think, play some really nice melodies, especially in that very just incredible solo in the middle, and also love how Brad Cook, the producer, really kind of highlights the drums in the mix as well. This is definitely my favorite track in that. This is the one song where I feel like I'm hanging on to every word she's saying. Probably the first time I've really done that on a Waxahatchee song, and I definitely am very grateful that this track did that for me. The next cut, Hell, I think definitely does show a much more upbeat side on the record, which I do appreciate. And even though she's playing with a much more mellow instrumental, she still definitely is sort of showcasing some of the rage that sort of defined heavier records of hers, like Ivy Trip or Out in the Storm. I mean, she's so passionate vocally on the track, and definitely a very cathartic moment on the record in terms of the lyrics. I mean, one of my favorite lines on here is, "You illuminate me as I galvanize, a flowery demise." Just, that's poeticism right there. The next track, Witches, is another track that has a similar kind of feel to it. However, not really one of my favorite tracks on here. It's, lyrically, it's not quite as strong. It definitely is one song that feels kind of underdeveloped even if it does have a melody. That's certainly a good idea. It's just kind of it's just sort of a filler moment for me, honestly. Then it's followed by the one track that could have easily been on Out in the Storm if it didn't have the rootsy instrumentation, and that would be the song War. I mean, the vocals, there's definitely a little bit of rage coming out, which I do really like to hear from Katie. Katie, I feel like any time she did that was some of her strongest moments. The guitar, the instrumentation is definitely very good too. I mean, the very complex melodies the electric guitar plays are phenomenal. It definitely has a feel similar to that of like maybe a Guided by Voices track in terms of the melody. The melody, obviously, with some not quite as bizarre lyrics, though it's definitely one of the best tracks here. And then it's followed by an incredibly strong ending, which starts with the song Arkadelphia. Definitely another track where I think Katie's lyrical talent is on full display. And on the song, she seems to be having a conversation with maybe her younger self or something like that, like kind of her younger, scrappier, like more sort of you could say like angsty self, and she's sort of she's sort of telling that self, you're just as stupid as I was back then. It's the kind of song where I'm not really going to spoil a lot of what she says lyrically, but when you hear it, trust me, you'll find it very lovely. I think the track Ruby Falls is this kind of atmospheric piano ballad with some very sort of dreary piano and synth chords that kind of remind me of like the last Radiohead album, A Moon-Shaped Pool, and the lyrics and the theme that Katie explores on this track would have to be death. Like, as you could tell from the opening lines from I take flight on borrowed time. I was once terrified of heights. I'll say a prayer, I'll look down when I'm ready to die. Which is just very, like, emotionally cutting, I must say. It's definitely is one of the sadder, darker tracks on here. But, definitely a nice contrast with some of the more euphoric and resilient moments on the record. The baritone guitar solo near the end is really, really gorgeous, and also love that moment in the song where there's that dramatic key change, and I am just like, I'm floating, like, when that happens. It's just wonderful. And then, of course, the album closes with the title track, St. Cloud, which is a song that, for a little while, I was kind of underwhelmed by, but the more I listen to it, the more I actually realize that this is a very key moment on the record. The themes of death continue on the song, only unlike the last track that sort of focused more on the morbid side of it. This is the one song where she seems to be sort of, coming to terms with the fact that, it's going to happen eventually, and she sounds very resilient about it on this track. Obviously, the lyrics are fantastic, but what really makes this song such a highlight for me is near the end when she, goes into that very, dramatic vocal performance on the Burning Slow and When I Go lines. Is just it hits me pretty hard, when I hear it. I mean, I'm, moved to tears, literally. And though I think musically it sounds very nice with the, the acoustic guitar, the roominess of the piano, and what sounds like mellotron strings, it definitely strong strings, as once again I really like how Brad Cook sort of brings a sort of roomy sound to the album. It's really just that vocal that very much sells this song for me and ultimately won me over after maybe 6 or 7 listens of it. So yeah, overall I thought this was a very good album. This is definitely one of my favorite singer-songwriter albums of the year. It's definitely, in my opinion, the best thing Katie has ever done, even though I know there are plenty of hardcore fans, obviously, that are probably going to eat this up, even if it is a different record in comparison with the rest of her discography, especially her last 2 LPs. It may not reinvent indie country necessarily, and there are a couple of moments here and there where maybe the instrumentals feel a little bit plain, but I don't sweat that too much because I think this is a great record with some very passionate, sophisticated vocal performances, certainly some very sobering lyrics, and overall a very strong production. This is definitely a record that is getting a lot of hype this year, and it completely deserves it. And it certainly is a record that will help bring a little bit of light in kind of these dark times in 2020. So yeah, strong 8 out of 10 for this new Waxahatchee album, St. Cloud. Highly recommend this thing, and I'll see you for episode 279.